right, I'm slowly making my way through Game of Thrones. I've finished season 5, so let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your thoughts on season 5 of Game of Thrones. Keep in mind, this is a spoiler review, so you can spoil away with season 5 and earlier, but as I'm watching through this for the first time, please be respectful. Don't spoil the later seasons. Honestly, I'm probably not even going to check the comments section on this video because people have been posting spoilers. Thank you for all of you that have been respectful in that regard. To give you a little bit of history on where things are at in regards to my watching of the show, I'm actually in season 7. I finished season 5 2 weeks back. Here's the even crazier part, the way this is all played out. So, if you've been tracking along with my little journey watching through Game of Thrones, you know the reason I started watching it was because my wife got COVID. She was locked in the other room, and she wasn't interested in watching Game of Thrones. It was just too harsh, hard R for her. So I started watching it because she was locked in the other room, and I thought I'd give it another try, and got enough hook to it that I've been obviously making my way through the seasons with these reviews. Somewhere around the end of season 3, she started walking in and tracking along and watching stuff. She's actually been watching through all of it with me. She's watched every single episode since then. Eventually, she's just as hooked on it as I am, even though she's constantly like, why am I watching this? I can't believe I'm watching the show. We are going to stay up late and watch one more episode, right? So she's as invested as me, which is it's a lot more fun to watch it with someone and enjoy it with them, process it with them, talk through it with them, and show their shock, awe, surprise, all of that fun stuff. So with that said, the way this is going to work is that I'll give my general thoughts on the season, and then I'll kind of walk through different plot points and dive into some specifics about stuff. Let's get started with my general thoughts on the season. And in general, season 5 was not one of my favorites. The first 7 episodes or so kind of felt like they were meandering a little bit, kind of moving the characters and pieces to set things up. The last 3 episodes of the season, things really picked up. You get a great battle. You get a couple of great battles. One of them with Jon Snow, just epic stuff that progressed the plot forward in a major way. You get the Colosseum sequence with Daenerys and friends. Very cool stuff. And then, of course, in King's Landing, the finale, in having a certain level of payback for Cersei in her own way, but also making her more of a character in another sense. All of that stuff was really nice. The journey to get there was awfully bleak. It's just kind of a season that I guess some people have mentioned that this season gets really dark. And they were not wrong. Seems like with all the characters, they just found some way to make this brutal thing happen to them. And it dwelled in that a lot. And some of those plot lines led somewhere in a meaningful way. In other ones, it just kind of felt like, what's the darkest thing we can do with these characters? And that's kind of frustrating. That's the stuff that I'm not as crazy about on this show, when it's predictably dark, predictably bleak, and it builds all the tension and has no release that's satisfying. That's the frustrating side. When there's darkness and there's consequences, and it is a very cynical world that they're in, and good guys certainly don't always win here. Okay, gotcha. Wants to be subversive, gotcha. But I want it to lead towards something. And so some of these ones was just kind of like, okay, we spent a lot of time on a plot line that just led to darkness. And a bunch of these felt kind of like that, or went places like, ooh, that was awfully brutal, stacked on top of brutality, But at the same time, the last 3 episodes are pretty great, pretty phenomenal. And that's sometimes where the show's frustrating, is that because it is such intricate storytelling and so many plot lines, and it can only inch each one forward because we got to get to the next one and move, that all this setup, you have all this setup that's not necessarily always the most pleasant to get through, leading to big payoff. Or I guess the way kind of season 3 or 4, my understanding is they're based off the same book. And so season 3 is just a lot of people traveling. Season 4 is all the payoff of that. And as I mentioned before, I have made it to season 6. And somewhat that's the case here of like season 5 is all is this brutal setup to pay everything off in season 6. So I'm kind of running a ranking in my head. Season 5 is certainly in the bottom section of the list as of the 6 seasons I've seen. It's certainly in the bottom half of them. Even though those last 3 episodes would rank pretty high in the list of episodes that I really enjoyed. From there, we'll kind of work into our specific plot lines. And as I mentioned before, I watched the season 2 weeks ago, so I probably won't go into as much detail as I did on some of the other ones, simply because a little bit more time has passed, and I'm trying to make sure I'm not confused on exactly where certain seasons ended because I'm 11 episodes past season 5. Kicking things off with Jaime's quest. So, with everything that's kind of gone on with, that was going on in season 4, we get to season 5, and Jaime is sent to go save their daughter from Dorne. So he gets Bronn to go with him on their little secret mission to go there. They get there to rescue her, only to find out she doesn't need to be rescued. She's actually quite happy, but the Mandalorian's lady friend and all of her fighter people are kind of a threat. So they all kind of converge all at the same moment. Every team gets there all at the same moment. So Bronn and Jaime get arrested. They do some things you're really not supposed to do, but Jaime's able to kind of talk through everything. They come up with a compromise, so we don't have to go to war. We don't have to kill anybody, and talk through everything. And final episode, Jaime gets in the boat with his daughter to head on back, and her fiance is right there with him. And right as they're about to leave, Mrs. Mandalorian gives the daughter a kiss on the lips, which seemed awfully personal. I went, that's not going to go well. That's something bad. This is not good. So she gets on the boat, and Jaime finally gets a happy moment in his life where he gets to be a dad, tells her, hey, I'm your dad. She's like, I already knew. And he's happy for all of 10 seconds before she dies from the poison that was introduced earlier on in the season. And then it cuts to the outside, and Lady's magic poison lips, and she's getting sick, her nose is bleeding, so drinks the antidote. She's good to go. This is one of those plot lines that just felt like a lot of effort just to lead to a depressing plot point. A lot of effort to build up a moment where Jaime gets this much happiness, this much success, just to have it taken away. And especially having seen season 6, and maybe it'll tie in and there'll be rivalry, sure. But it was awfully, awfully depressing, and a whole season's worth of effort just to be like, just kidding, he fell. Then we got Arya and the Assassins, and this was pretty dull. I've, generally speaking, enjoyed the Arya storylines because she's a person of action, and she's out in this dark world, kind of slowly being taken from this stark nobility to this world of just kind of scoundrels and driven largely by hate. And there's something to that that's very captivating, interesting, watching her do all this. And then you hear she's heading off to do assassin training. You think, that'd be cool. I really enjoyed the faceless assassin guy. What was that, back in season 2? Just like a real nice vibe to him. And then we get here, and her assassin training is her sweeping for 3 episodes, her cleaning dead bodies for 3 episodes, and then them slowly starting to kind of... It's just kind of... I get what they're doing of sorts with it, but it wasn't the most compelling stuff because it was like a season of her sweeping. So you get to kind of the last little bit, and they start to trust her to do this mission where she's supposed to poison someone, and instead she sees... one of the people that's on her list. And so it leads to just a great little moment where she sneaks in on this guy, and he's just established to be the worst, like just torturing kids. And you're just like, this guy's gross. And then she shows up and have this moment where this guy just starts beating this little girl, and the girl won't fall over and won't submit. And then you're like, oh, she is using one of these faces, revealed it is her, and then, brutally kills the guy. Nice little satisfying moment. Doesn't make up for the other 9 episodes were pretty dull for this plot line, but like when you're like, oh, is this what she's going to be doing for the rest of the show? It's tracking these people down and killing them. I think I'm on board with this, and all of it leads to the guy drinks this stuff and ends up poisoning her, so she goes blind, setting up what she'll be doing in the next season with kind of her training stuff. So, nice payoff at the end. Actually, this goes back to what I said before of the first 6, 7 episodes of the season. Was a lot of like, okay, she's sweeping. Okay, she's cleaning bodies. But then it has a thing that paid off in those last 3 episodes that were actually really good. Speaking of Stark kids, Bran wasn't here the whole season. It's pretty wild that like a whole cast member, I think he sat the whole season out. Season 4 ends with him meeting up with the talking tree, and he doesn't come back the whole season. He's just in dream mode the whole time, which I was totally fine with since don't tend to enjoy time with Brandon. That'll bring us to Brienne of Tarth's quest. Notice I didn't call her Captain Phasma this time. I'm growing as a person. So she's sent by Jaime to find the Stark girls in the previous season. She found the Hound with Arya, kills the Hound, and Arya runs off, and she doesn't actually get the Stark girl. It's the beginning of this season, she catches up with Sansa on this journey, approaches her, and Sansa's still under the spell of Littlefinger, still trusting him. So he uses his words to basically get Sansa not to trust her, which turns out very badly for Sansa, that she trusted the wrong person in this moment. And so Brienne ends up having to go on this long quest in the background of this season where she's trying to find subtle ways to communicate with Sansa without letting her know, because Sansa doesn't really trust her yet. So it leads to a scenario where Brienne of Tarth, for most of the season, is literally just standing there staring, looking at a window, waiting to see a candle. Literally for half the season or more than that, which does kind of provide like this background context where she's training her squire friend. Doesn't do more than that. And then the thing that was kind of nice, it does get a little past jumping ahead on the season, but so you get to the end of it, Stannis fails. And all these other plot lines are running where Sansa's in trouble, Stannis has his stuff, and Brienne is informed Stannis is in the area, so she just heads to go kill him. And you kind of forget that. Like, it's one of those things that there's so many plot lines, and you go on such these long journeys with these characters, you forget that she was pledged to Renly first. Like, that's where she came in, is pledged to him. And the way that she got on this whole mission for Sansa came through Jaime, that came through Catelyn, that goes back to what happened in the tent, where Stannis sends Witch Lady to send a demon with Stannis' face to kill Renly. And so you kind of get all this time, we kind of go back like, oh yeah, she's still on a mission of revenge. That's still a thing. And so you get to that moment, and because of the way it plays out, it almost doesn't even get to be as satisfying as you want it to be. It's like the right thing to happen at that moment, that she gets there just in time to be able to be the final blow of the utter failure that is Stannis. But at the same time, because of all the journey that he's been on, everything that as much as like you disgusted by him, and we'll get to that, but you're more disgusted by the person that he's trying to defeat. And so you have this moment where it's like, wish there'd been a different way, but that's some of the brilliance of the show and the way some of this works out. That leads us to Sansa and the very bad marriage. So, start off the season, she's hanging out with Littlefinger, who comes up with a great plan that she should marry the son of the guy that betrayed her brother, mother, and all of these Stark forces. And because at this point in time, she kind of trusts him, or at least trusts him enough to understand what he's doing. And as much as she knows he's not trustworthy, she does believe that he does care about her. So it's kind of a weird little dynamic between the two of them. But somehow she's convinced to go marry a Bolton. And little do don't think Littlefinger knew what we know. We watched 2 seasons of him or I guess 1 season, we're 5. Yeah, so I guess we've taught 2 seasons of him utterly torturing Theon. So we knew, like, our whole perspective is this guy is, like, absolutely cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Littlefinger just knew he was a bad guy, probably. So we're like, this is not going to go well. So she's taken there. Before they're married, Ramsay mostly behaves as if he's going to treat her nicely. Didn't seem like that was particularly likely with this guy. And so they end up getting married. And even before the marriage, you just like, you see the sadism coming into play where he's like, Theon's the closest thing to family you have. So how about he gives you away? And it's just doing everything he can to just provoke, make things as bad as is possible. In which case, they get married, and the idea that he comes up with is, what if Theon is in the room for wedding night, and then Ramsay is as sadistic as you'd imagine, despite saying that he wouldn't hurt her. And I mean, without showing anything, you're just like, oh, that is brutal, rough. And once again, like the stuff that kind of takes this season into like a really like dark place. Sansa is married to the person that betrayed her family, has to live with them once again, and then is tortured and raped by this person. Right after she turned away the one person that was dedicated their life to actually like protecting her. Turn that away. So she's stuck there. Brutal stuff. And so she goes to Theon to light the candle. I guess didn't mention that in the Brienne of Tarth section. She's waiting to see this candle. Theon is sent up to light the candle, put it in the window, and instead he goes to Ramsay because he's just too afraid to rebel at this point in time, which leads to more torture and such for Sansa. Other people get skinned alive because of it. So Sansa really doesn't like Theon at this point in time. And eventually, through all the turning of events that end up taking place throughout all of this, Papa Bolton, his wife gives birth to another son. Ramsay, of course, being insecure about all of this, you're not we're thinking this is probably not heading in the right direction, that his father would trust his sadistic son. And as it turns out, as soon as this is announced, he kills his dad and then feeds his mother-in-law or stepmom and half-brother to his dogs. As we were watching it, my wife actually fell asleep during that episode and woke up right at that moment. Wakes up right as that scene is happening. What am I watching? What's happened in this episode? Like, a lot happened in this episode, but yeah, that happened. And so once again, just like from Ramsay is just the absolute worst. But likewise, in the midst of all this stuff, while Sansa is trying to escape, she lights the candle at the window right at the moment that Brienne of Tarth hears Stannis is in the area, takes off to leave to go kill Stannis. That's when the candle is lit. And it's just like that, the brutality of all that. And those are great moments if it doesn't feel like the whole season has been punching me in the gut. When you've been punching me in the gut the whole season, then I don't have any breath or anything. Like you've already taken the wind out of me, so you can't doubly take the wind out of me. Like I think that's the frustration of the way some of this works, where if you just keep punching in the gut with every plot line, at a certain point in time, the moments don't feel the same oomph anymore. And that's where maybe they, I don't know, not have every plot line be super depressing and have unfortunate timing. So anyway, the way it works out is they accidentally kill Ramsay's lady that he actually likes, that's very jealous of Sansa. They accidentally kill her and they decide to escape, jump off the walls, and then we don't really know kind of what happens from there. But she marries Ramsay in this season, gets raped by him a whole bunch, and then escapes with Theon, who had betrayed her. And you start to get a little bit of that Theon redemption arc. He starts to come back just a little bit because he sees Sansa, and he gets a bit of his humanity back, and she can talk just a little enough sense into him, while just enough of that he can break out of it and kind of escape. But just kind of one of those, so dark, with very little glimpses of like, yeah, they jumped off a wall and, you know, at least they're not being tortured anymore. Maybe they're dead, but at least they're not being tortured anymore. Then we have the cult in King's Landing, and I thought this was probably a nice little touch to spice things up in King's Landing, change up the dynamic. And so this religious sect starts to gain momentum in King's Landing. Cersei, being the dumbest character on the show, once again, I'm in season 7 at this point in time, and I fully stand by that. Of all the characters, she's conniving, she has lots of schemes, but how often do her schemes end up backfiring horribly on her and have dire consequences for the people that she says she's trying to protect? All of them. Everything that she tries to do ends up blowing up in her face, and the one thing that she seems to be good at is not dying. But she's managed to raise at least one awful child, one weakling child that was ineffectual, and then one that seemed to be happy, normal, and balanced, and then even through all of this, that child ended up getting killed, tied directly to the evil schemes of Cersei. So anyway, Cersei, being a moron, comes up with this plan to empower the religious nut bars, to turn them against the Tyrells, and is doing this whole manipulation. All the while, everybody knows that she's the most corrupt person in town. Everybody knows, everybody's heard the murmurs and rumors of who she has in her bedroom. All the while, she knows that one of the key nut bars of this is her own, nephew or something like that? Whatever the one is that she was shacking up with. And for some reason, she thinks if she spills the beans on the Tyrells, this isn't going to come back to haunt her. But like with all of her wacky schemes, she can only see how this will hurt other people. She can never imagine how it will backfire. And of course it does. So anyway, she does this, and it leads to all the the Tyrell siblings getting arrested, and it's just all entirely her schemings. Clearly, she's smirking about it, pretending to care. Her naive son can't figure out the fact that she's the worst, and she can't figure out that she set the stage for her own castle crumbling. In which case, eventually, of course, she gets arrested, locked up. And maybe it's because one of the lead characters, there's a side to it that you don't want those to be the people to bring her down because you don't like the religious nut bars. But certainly it's lovely to see her humbled. And through all of this, she, of course, gets released because of her walk of atonement, where you really kind of get to see her put in her place, and just a bit of her whole humanity, where she finally has to be vulnerable, and people don't have to be afraid of her for this brief little window of time. There's some satisfaction in that, while at the same time being just terrifying in this other sense of, like, you realize just how little control they have of King's Landing anymore. And as you get to the end of it, there's this sense in which you're like, whatever she's going to do about this, it's going to be nuts. Whatever she's going to do to get revenge for this, something wild is going to happen. So that was kind of satisfying. But yeah, Cersei and her schemes, she is like the worst at this. And people that kind of keep telling me, no, she's really what? Don't underestimate her. Well, think of how many things she's done that have led to just horrible consequences for her family. And once again, I'm in season 7. I know what happens in season 6. How her schemes backfire on her constantly. So still after all of this, she's unable to realize that Tyrion didn't kill Joffrey. She literally has Tyrells arrested and knows she's plotting against them and can't figure out the fact that they're behind this, that Mama Tyrell is behind. Like, she can't figure it out. She's so blinded by her hate for her brother that she believes this stupid thing that he did it, despite there being no evidence of it. Speaking of Tyrion's journey. So, at the end of last season, killed his father, hopped into a box, and was being shipped across the seas. I don't actually remember what the exact ending point was and what we knew when. But very early in the season, she's teaming up with our eunuch friend Varys to head to Daenerys to try and cut some sort of deal. And all along the way there, because he's kind of a foolish and kind of given up on life, decides to head into town to get drunk and head to a brothel and all that fun stuff. And along the way, Friend Zone discovers him, kidnaps him, and decides to take him to Daenerys. So, interestingly enough, it's just a different way to travel, get some different characters interacting with one another. But, so, Friend Zone ends up taking Tyrion on this journey along the way. You have this moment where they're traveling through, was it Valeria, I think is what it's called, the actual old city that's been abandoned and is now just filled with stonewalkers. And while they're in this boat, Tyrion is so cynical about everything. And even though Jorah has been like cast out and is in this low point, his only thought is how can I win back her affection? So he takes Tyrion and thinks this is the way. And you have this moment as they're kind of connecting a little bit. Drago the dragon flies over them, and you see for the first time like hope in Tyrion's eyes. You see for the first time he's like, wait, the like that's a real dragon, and it's not a small dragon. Like, wait, this is what it was that changed that thing right there, changed him. What? And you see just the spark of that. And you get a number of those moments throughout the season where Tyrion changes quite a bit. While not his personality, his worldview changes in an interesting way. And of course, they're attacked by those skin dudes. One of them touched Jorah's arm that sets this kind of long path of him keeping it hidden, and has to do stuff about that eventually. But so they end up walking, eventually get kidnapped, and then the show goes into like gladiator mode, and you have them heading into the capital to do these gladiator fights. And Jorah his only thought is, once again, how do I win her affection? So he's in one of these preliminary ones, wins the battle, and still kind of gets cast out again. Tyrion, however, gets connected to her. So you kind of have a story kind of diverges a little bit here, but kind of following Tyrion, and he's able to talk his way into helping her. So quickly he's able to earn trust by kind of playing man, we had bad parents and bad siblings, didn't we? Yeah, I understand you. You seem decent enough. Let's try and get you on the Iron Throne because you're better than my sister and her family. They're wacky. And then you have Jorah going full gladiator mode, sells himself into slavery to get one more chance at trying to win these gladiator fights. And meanwhile, it's tough. I guess we'll go straight into Daenerys because it ties into it. All kind of chaos all throughout the season with these gold masked people attacking the city, trying to undermine what she's trying to do, and she doesn't really know how to undo this. So she's going back and forth with these different strategies, and brutal things are happening. You have the sequence where the other mentor guy from King's Landing ends up getting killed. Worm Tongue. I was going Worm Tongue. I'm getting my worm names all mixed up. Talking for too long, too quickly about too many names. But he almost dies himself, and so there's a lot of just inner conflict in the city, and eventually Daenerys decides to reinstate the gladiator fights, as per what we were just talking about, as a way to try and even things out, give people stuff. Even as working decides to marry one of these guys that keeps trying to tell her, like, no, you have to honor the traditions. So he's like, okay, I'll honor the traditions. I'll marry one of you. Like, all right, let's try and do it your way. Like, let's try and earn the people's trust by honoring their customs. All of this leads to this sequence. Amazing, amazing stuff. So starts off Gladiator, where you've got Jorah comes out doing this gladiator fight, and we're watching it, and like he's revealed himself and he's almost dying, and Daenerys sees he's almost going to die, so he keeps being tempted to like stop the fight. She's like, no, you can't do it. You don't dishonor their customs. Gotta honor him. And she's so torn because she doesn't want him to die. She doesn't want him in his sight. Like, he's clear, like, interesting stuff. So by the end, he manages to win, and then you're watching it, and he grabs a spear, and it looks like he throws it at her, which would seem out of character until you realize, wait a minute, there's gold-faced people everywhere killing people, and all-out carnage just explodes in this place. And, like, Jorah runs up to try and protect her, and in this moment of, like, we're not in queen mode, we're in survival mode. Who does she actually trust? Suddenly, of course she trusts him. And this guy that she was sending off, you can never be around me again, suddenly, not touching because that would pass along his weird virus to her, but grabs the shirt or something like that. All of it leads to, like, they're surrounded, they're going to die. And at this particular moment, our dragon friend decides to return and just starts torching people. And then she starts riding the dragon while torching people. And it is like building tension and having release and payoff. These are the ones where it works. Like, really depressing, horrible stuff happened in this plot line with Daenerys, and obviously when her friend dies and seriously injured someone else, she has to cast out Jorah. People are getting slaughtered. Horrible things are happening. So there's that tension building, darkness, leading to the moment of payoff and victory, which is Daenerys riding a dragon, torching people. Amazing, amazing stuff. And like, you're seeing who she's supposed to be. You're seeing the fulfillment of her, like, the greatness, the specialness, the chosenness that is her, as contrasted with the many other people in the show that think they're the chosen one, and then there's actually something special about her. And in the midst of this, you have even another one of those moments where Tyrion, he saw a dragon, goes, wow, that's pretty awesome, and then he meets her, and she's like, wow, she's pretty great. And in the middle of this sequence where he's supposed to die, all of them are supposed to die, and then he sees this dragon show up, and she's in control of a dragon. And this character that seems good-natured, certainly for his family, but is deeply cynical and doesn't believe in anything, and just believes in the selfishness of everyone, the meaninglessness of everything, because of what he's seen, what he's experienced. Cynical in his own way, certainly. And then he sees this, and you can just see this different version of him coming alive that actually believes in something. He's not just doing it because he enjoys it or because he's supposed to or it's something to do. He actually believes in this person. Because of what he's seeing, it changed him. That was pretty amazing. That's what this season was so frustrating, because it was like 7 episodes, like, okay, where are we going with this? And then you get to those last 3 and you're like, wow, that was some of the best stuff in the entire show. I'm so conflicted on all this stuff. So anyway, she flies off, and then the season kind of ends with her getting picked up by some Dothraki people while hiding her identity. And 2 friend zone and lover boy heading off to try and save her, while Tyrion is left behind to kind of run the city in kind of this very strange scenario of, like, somehow he is now taking over the thing that she's built, which is unexpected. So then we'll go down the story of Stannis, which comes in to the Jon Snow plotline quite a bit. So Stannis at the end of last season came to save the day, to rescue the people at the wall, and stopped the wildling, defeated their army, knocked them back, took a bunch of them captive. And immediately Stannis has a great deal of respect for Jon Snow because Ned Stark backed him. And then also there is that Jon Snowness that he just kind of commands respect from people, even if they don't agree with him. This season they really don't. There's a certain respect for Jon Snow because he's such an honest person, good-natured person, that you believe in his motivations. So all throughout the season, Stannis is trying to defeat the Boltons and trying to get support to do this. And so you have this whole kind of plot line of him really trying very hard to recruit Jon Snow and playing every hand that he has. I will call you a Stark. You will be called a Stark, which is, of all the things you can tempt Jon Snow with, Stannis finds the ultimate bargaining chip, but Jon Snow's legitimately a good guy, an honorable person, that even with the ultimate bait, he doesn't take it, and he won't back Stannis' cause. Stannis eventually decides to march on anyway, into the snow. It's very bad. People are dying. Horses are dying. Ramsay, who knows the area better, takes 20 guys, sabotages their stuff, burns their stuff, kills some animals. So they're in a bad place. And then Stannis' worst tendencies come out in the final little bit there. He sends off the Onion Knight to go and try and get some troops from Jon Snow. Like, hey, if you can go do this real quick, I got something. Just get some foods for our final little charge that we're going to do. And then he sends him off in actuality because our witch lady has told him the way to win the battle is to sacrifice his own daughter because she has king's blood. And so this is what they decide to do, and sacrifice the daughter, which one of the most horrifying things in the show as this happens is this guy that they've spent several episodes really building up the fact that he cares about his daughter. But he's a man that's just so dedicated to whatever he believes in. He will do what he has to do. So he knows the Onion Knight would never allow this to take place. So he sends him off so he can't see this and stop it from happening. And so then as they're about to do this, his wife, for the first time, breaks from her religious fanaticism and becomes a mother. She's been horrible to her daughter. Stannis has been the better as the father than she's been as the mother. And finally, as she's watching her daughter burned to death, has a change of heart, change of mind. But Stannis sticks to his guns, burns his own daughter to death. Which, as it turns out, if you're trying to get people to follow you, not a good strategy. Bad idea. So, as one can predict, the next day, half his people leave him because he is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs and thinks that killing his daughter will help them win the battle. So he loses all the people that might have actually helped him win the battle. And then as the witch lady realizes this has happened, she decides, like, okay, I think I read this wrong. I'm at her. So she takes off before the battle even takes place. And then someone reveals to Stannis, hey, your wife killed herself. So he goes into the battle with not even a fraction of what he needs to win this battle. And for some reason, some people actually still went with him at this point in time. And they don't even bother to show the battle because it's so depressing how horribly they are defeated. No one comes to back him. No anything. They just lose horribly. And he's like sitting by a tree, realizing all of this was for nothing. Everything I've done was for nothing. I killed my brother. I killed my daughter. Led to my wife dying. All these people have died because of me. And I was wrong. Then Brienne of Tarth walks up, says, I was pledged to your brother, and a demon with your face killed him. I'm here for revenge. And he's like, go ahead and do your duty. I understand. Doesn't give her any satisfaction. Isn't belligerent. Doesn't ask for, like, I deserve this. Stannis sticks to his character. All right, do your duty. And she kills him. And you get to this moment, like, where you have this battle, where all the things happening. You, of course, want Ramsay to lose. You hate the Boltons. You kind of stand, but kind of want Stannis to win in a certain sense, but you don't really back Stannis because you know he's like this guy that's sacrificing all sorts of people he shouldn't be sacrificing, doing things he shouldn't be doing. You don't really back him. And then he kills his own daughter, so you have a battle between the guy that killed his daughter and Ramsay Bolton, or the Boltons. And who do you want to win in that situation? Well, you kind of want all of them to kill everyone in that situation because it's such an unpleasant moment. But it's also one of those ones of we spent a lot of time with Stannis, 4 seasons on Stannis's journey just for him to have this humiliating defeat and just sit on a tree and get killed. All that buildup for him to just fail miserably. And that'll bring us to our final little plot line with Jonathan Snow, who at the end of last season had quite the victory in what he was able to do in rallying the troops to stop the first wave of the wildling attack just long enough to try and negotiate with them and then for Stannis to show up and stop any further threats. So people like him at this point in time because he was such a hero of that battle and they believe in him. So this leads to a vote where they choose him to be the Lord Commander. And it's kind of the positional acknowledgement of what he'd been earned throughout the last season, that this is a guy that people trust. So he's put in this position and he's in this interesting spot of having spent a lot of time with the wildlings and he's seen this army, he knows this threat that's coming, he's aware of this threat that's coming. And so he just sees the world differently than everyone else. He just has a significantly more balanced perspective than everyone else. So no one is able to understand the choices that he's making. And so he goes to the old Targaryen Meister, who convinces him to do, if you know what's the right thing, that's what you have to do. Whether people like it or not, you need to do it. In which case, he decides to go on a mission to save the wildlings. He brings in his bearded friend, sets him free and says, "This is no trap. I will go with you. We need their army if we're going to beat the army of the dead. And we'll give you land over there. We're just going to give it to you. We're going to put you over here. But the catch is that you have to fight with us when that army comes. That's the only catch. You don't have to bow to me, but you have to fight that army." And so a lot of people don't like that he's doing this. Think this is a very bad idea. But he goes, and this, I believe, this is episode 8 of the season. And he goes to the wildling base and goes to meet with all of the different leaders to tell them, I will give you free land. There's an army coming. You know they're coming. I'm right here. You can kill me. You can whatever you want. But I am here. I've set this guy free. And most of them kind of agree. Most of them are yeah, we will. We'll go with you. We don't like you guys, but something about this seems like we trust you. And they're very skittish, but they're okay, let's see what happens. And they start loading up. So a few of them are no, I don't trust you. A few of them start loading up into their boats. People are heading out. And this is when the army of the dead shows up. And so we're 5 seasons into the show, at the end of the 5th season. And we've seen these little glimpses of them. They're creepy. One of them shows up to attack. They're sacrificing children. But we've seen them kind of walk by. We haven't seen this before. And they just fly in, kind of leads to this massive, gigantic battle that, once again, these first 7 episodes, okay, what are we doing here? Episode 7, you've got Jon Snow teaming up with all the wildlings to battle off the dead. And it's big. It's epic. There's giants. There's all of the crazy that you want are happening in this deal. And you have the moment where he's trying to get to the dragon glass only to discover that the other thing that works against him is his Valyrian steel sword. So many of these just great little moments. The one of the ladies that believed in him just dies and then trusted him, sends off her daughter. And as soon as she sent off her daughter, was like, her daughter's in trouble. Like that lady's in trouble. And, she dies in the midst of all of this. And it's like this moment that on the one hand, it's this horrible loss. All these people die and they're heading out in the boats, and it kind of has this, these great final shots of them, the last of them desperately escaping into their boats, setting off, and the army kind of stands up, and the was a Night King or whatever his name is, raises his hands or whatever, and then all these dead bodies stand up, and every human that was killed is now a new member of the enemy army. It's this fantastic moment of loss. And in the other sense, it's this incredible moment of victory for Jon Snow, the character. As like everyone in every single one of those boats, every single one of them knows the only reason they're alive is because he showed up to save them. And what's like those powerful moments of like all the tension build up, this guy that at the beginning of the show was the bastard son sent off to the Night Watch in season 1. He's like, man, I thought this place was going to be heroics and all that stuff. And it's not none of the things I thought it was. Like, it's just not, doesn't at all deliver on what he thought it was going to be. And you feel like he's sent off to do nothing. And then it leads to this moment where like he saves all of these people. And this act that he does there is very important for all kinds of things that happen later on. And certainly earns him the trust, like literally the trust of thousands of people. But in doing so, he lost the trust of some of the wrong people. So he returns back to the Night Watch, lets all of these wildlings through. And some people really didn't like this decision of his. And so they tell him that they found his uncle, the little boy. Ollie tells him, we found your uncle. And he heads down. There's a sign that says traitor. And then they stab him to death. Several of them, the people you'd expect that have always kind of opposed him. And then the little boy that looked up to him, but whose parents were killed by wildlings and eaten by wildlings. He can't forgive this. Can't forgive them. And thus plunges his own sword into Jon Snow, killing him, ending the show on that note. And there's so many great ups and downs that it's the plot lines where it just felt like that was a down that didn't go anywhere. That's the stuff that was the frustration of the season. I mean, legitimately. So much of episodes 8, 9, and 10, some of the best of the show. And then a lot of the other stuff, it's like, man, we are just sitting a lot of time in darkness. It was all compelling. It was all intriguing. It was like very bingeable in the way that it was doing it. I just wish that it had been balanced out maybe a little bit more on some of those plot lines that just were like stewing in darkness for a whole season without it leading to anything that really paid off. Where these other ones, like the darkness of people turning on Jon Snow, like that's like satisfying because Jon Snow made a choice that earned him the trust of people. It was like that double-sidedness that the show does so well, a big payoff, big consequences. It was that. Some of the other ones were just a lot of darkness. I know that's the show, but anyway, I've repeated myself way too much, just kind of saying some of the same stuff. So, alrighty, I'll be back pretty soon with season 6 review because obviously I've already seen it, as I've told you way too many times in this video. So I'll shoot that in the next couple days. You'll see it much quicker than you saw. Than it took me to get to the season 5 review, and likewise I'll probably finish season 7 and 8 pretty quickly as well, and so there'll be quite a bit of Game of Thrones content over the next month, I would imagine. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies and TV too much.